an old friend here that from the show from a long, long time ago, even before he started working at IGN. So he's always been a huge supporter of ours. We have Ryan, man, from IGN. What's going on, Ryan? Ryan McCaffrey.
What's happening, Danny? Good to see you. Yeah, it's you guys. I think you're the longest running Xbox show. I believe it's
yes,
you.
Xbox. Yes.
Yeah, like dedicated. Yeah, because it's I don't even. I think you may have even started Gamertag Radio. When did you start it?
February 25th, 2005.
Okay, yeah, because I started KOXM back when I was at OXM in February of 06.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah.
you even had me beat there. Of course, OXM's sadly dead now, but
Yeah.
and then
Yep.
IGN they started what was then 3 Red Lights sometime well after.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came, and then it got rebooted into Podcast Unlocked, and then I took it over and kind of redid it. So yeah, you're the king, man. You're the veteran here.
Thanks, though, man. How long it's been with Xbox Unlocked now, like the podcast Unlocked?
I just crossed 8 years at IGN. So
wow, so it's ever since you started, right?
Literally my first official day at IGN. I said, let's go do a podcast. Let's get in there and get going.
Yeah.
So
what is it from about podcasting that you were like, man, I like doing this, man. Instead of, because you started doing that before doing videos. So what was it that got your attention of podcasting?
Well, I grew up. I loved radio growing up. I loved listening to the radio. Like you and I are probably the last generation that grew up with radio, with like actual FM radio, and always loved it. And I was a big Howard Stern fan growing up, and I would listen to him every day and his show. And I always wanted to be on the radio because it's like I'm stuck with this face, but I was gifted with people. The one thing I've literally never been told, wow, you're a handsome fellow.
Yeah.
But I have been told, wow, you've got a great voice. I've been told that a lot, and so I did get the gift of the voice, and so I was like, man, I'd love to do radio. That'd be fun, and I did a little bit of it in college. Should have done more college radio. That's a regret. But when podcasting came around after I was working at OXM doing the magazine thing, I thought, well, this is a great excuse to scratch that radio itch that I never got to do, but still be doing this other thing I love. And so yeah, like that's kind of it for me. It lets me have that fun without actually having gone into that career.
Mm-hmm. You know which interview that stood out to me that was like, to me, it was one of the best interviews you ever done, was the one that you had Phil Spencer, Peter Moore, like the whole different generations of Xbox. That was an
ultimate Blackley.
Yeah, that was amazing. An amazing podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is, I knew at the time, and I still believe this because that was 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. That was 2015. Mm-hmm. That is the best thing I've ever done, and probably ever will do at IGN. Like, it's not to say that I don't try to do cool things now, but that was just such a special planet aligning moment. And it took 6 months to set up, to try and get those guys all in the same place at the same time to do that. And yeah, that was I worked hard for that opportunity and feel really good that I, like, when I got the opportunity, I took full advantage, and they were great. I mean, it's that was a fun night. That was one night at E3. It was after hours at E3, and that was a special time.
Yeah, as a fan of Xbox, that was like my highlight. I was like, man, I don't know if we ever gonna see something like that, man, in the future, man. But it was really cool, and I just love the conversation of like behind the scenes stories of the good and bad from the company, So the one that stood out to me was about the Xbox 360 Red Ring of Death. Yes. That was really good. I think it was Peter Moore that talked about it.
Peter Moore, yeah, talking about having to go ask Steve Ballmer for $1 billion.
Wow. He was probably like
and
nervous.
Steve saying yes.
Yeah. That was cool. Was there any interviews, do you think, that stood out to you from your career, from like podcast wise, in your opinion?
Oh man,
besides that one?
I've been lucky to do a lot over the years. I will say, so my other, it's not Xbox specific, but I do this little interview show that really nobody watches and nobody listens to. It's totally a passion project called IGN Unfiltered. It's just once a month. So I just get, because one guest a month, try and get that out once a month. And that's been going for a few years now too. I've got I think 51 or so episodes, but there have been some really great people that I've been lucky enough to have on there. But the one that stands out is talking Xbox. Marty O'Donnell, composer from Bungie, the composer of the Halo theme and all the wonderful Halo music over the years.
Mhm.
We had a 2-hour conversation, and that we shot at his new studio. He's got Highwire Games now. They did that game Golem for PSVR, uh, and I'll tell you, he was getting pretty real about the breakup and the divorce from Bungie. They fired him, and there was litigation, and it was getting into well past just like business friendly topics. Like it was getting real,
Mhm.
and in my head, I'm like, man, I want to ask him as someone who was divorced a long time ago and went into therapy. I was like, man, I want to ask this guy if he saw a therapist to help deal with this. But it's like, man, if he bristles at that question, if that's like too personal, then this interview could go take a wrong turn like real quick. But I decided to go for it, and he was just super honest and said, yeah, he did say he went and got some mental health help in that time, and that always stood out to me as like, wow, I was like a real journalist in that instead of just a pretend boy doing pretend journalism.
Mhm. Nah, but you know why I like those type of conversation is that it gets personal. I think
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like clickbait. It's just you guys are just having a normal conversation, and that person that you're interviewing, they're gonna get comfortable and they're gonna say more things than just
Yeah.
talking to like a regular media. You know what I'm saying? So
That's right. I
yeah.
mean, that was always, and I'll tell you, love or hate Howard Stern because he tends to elicit both reactions.
Hmm.
Uh, that's he is probably the best interviewer in media over the last 30 years, or at least maybe 20 years, because he does exactly that. And that was always he was always a role model for me as far as interviewing people goes, because he's real good at that, of just getting you comfortable and then having a real conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very lucky to get to do what I do for this. Like I'm going on, listen, it's July 15th as we record this. So I'm coming up on 18 years of doing
Oh
this.
my God.
Like I'm so spoiled. I'm so grateful and fortunate that, I mean, yes, I had the opportunity that as a young kid coming out of college. So I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I like to. My hope is that I've just worked hard to make the most of that and not take it for granted. But I am a blessed person to get to do this for the better part of 2 decades
Yeah.
now, and hopefully more.
No, and I feel, Ryan, that you are one of those people. I can name only a couple people, in my opinion, that grew up just reading your content and also listen to your show. I feel like you also have changed the industry, and when it comes to like media.
Oh, I don't know about
No,
that.
I think so. Yeah, I'll add honestly, like you, Dan Shu. There's a couple people that I mean, there's a long list of people too, but that also used to work at One Up. I feel like I wish more people will focus on just creating more better content instead of focusing on just clickbait. 'Cause nowadays
I'm with you there.
nowadays that's what we see, man, because that's what gain the hits and ads
Yeah.
and money. So, but I love that sometimes you guys are, especially you will create stuff from the podcast. There's just if it feels genuine, like the conversation that you had with Peter Moore, with Phil Spencer, with a bunch of other people. It's like us. Like sometimes we just record because we're just fans of gaming, and because of our conversation with that person that we interview, it goes everywhere, it goes viral, and it's not planned at all. And those to me are
Right.
like the highlights when it comes to like creating content. So
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You get, like, for me, I gotta put my head on the pillow and sleep at night. Like I am I'm probably honest. I'm a very much an honesty is the best policy person, and
hmm
that has served me well in both my personal and professional life. It's like I just like I'm not gonna I don't like to BS people, and I don't like to lie to people, and it's just like let's just like I'm just gonna conduct myself in an honest way, and
hmm
I'm not always gonna be right, and I'm not always gonna do the right thing. I'm gonna try, but I find that, yeah, it's like if you just kind of just be honest about yourself, and when you're whether you're interviewing somebody else or talking about a product, like it's not to derail here, but like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Xbox, obviously Xbox has suffered this generation. The story is well told about the Xbox One.
Mm-hmm.
But we've kept doing we do podcast unlocked every week, as you do gamertag radio on a regular basis, and it's I get the most hate I get, online hate. Thankfully, it's never crossed over into like real world scary hate.
Mm-hmm.
But the trolling I get is from so-called Xbox fans, because they just it's like they want me, some of them, not all of them. It's a vocal minority. They want you to lie to them and tell them everything's great. It's like, well, no, the thing you love, whether it's Xbox or let's say like Halo 5, when I did an hour when that game came out about how much I hated the campaign because I love Halo so much and it was so flawed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you never criticize, they'll never get better. If you're just telling, if a dog is eating its own poop and you're like, good boy, good job. Well, guess what? The dog's going to keep eating the poop, and it's never going to learn not to do that and to be healthier and to be better.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why I went there. Maybe it's just
all,
the dog's right over here, but
it's all good.
But yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
constructive. But it goes the other way too. You can't just hate for the sake of being a hater and doing, just being unfair.
Mm-hmm.
It's both ways. You gotta, constructive criticism is key to, in my opinion, your own integrity and your own professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you're really serious about being an enthusiast about something, whether it's Xbox or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to call out the good and the bad, so that you're always wanting this thing you like to learn from the bad, but also learn from the good. Like, yeah, keep doing that, but that will mean something. When whereas if you do nothing but praise, well, then your praise starts to lose meaning, right? Like, oh, well, of course, like Ryan always says great things about Xbox. Why should it, like?
Yeah.
No, it's like, now when Halo Infinite comes around, if it's awesome, and of course we are hoping it is, like, I like to think that my word will mean something then, because oh well, Ryan spent an hour trashing Halo 5.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's saying Infinite's great, which I hope to be able to say, then I'm hoping that'll mean something to people.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, we definitely going to talk about that in a few minutes, but
Sure.
one thing, and a lot of people don't know about this. So back in 2001, when I was doing internet radio, IGN featured my show, Fantasy Star Online, PSO Radio back then. And
Nice.
and I was like,
love that game.
I love that game too. So I was like very surprised that you guys, this was before you started working there, but I was surprised that they posted an article about my show. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna email IGN because I think this would be cool. We could do like an internet radio. Maybe we could collab or something. This was in 2001. I was still in college.
Yeah.
Man, I sent an email. Crickets. I didn't get like no calls or anything. But I feel like at that time it was so new that they were like, nah, this is not gonna be a big thing. But I'm glad to see that not only IGN but everybody's now doing podcasts. Like I love that.
That's right.
There's different type of content, and you have the option to to listen to whatever you want, nowadays. So I know you guys have
That's
multiple,
right.
right? Multiple shows and stuff. So
Oh yeah, I mean, I personally do 3 podcasts, two for IGN, and then I do for on the side. I'm very passionate about Teslas, so I do a Tesla podcast, which may seem silly and stupid to some people, but guess what? That's okay, because that's just my little corner. That's a thing I like, and I do content on that, and that's the beauty part. It's like, it's going back to the radio thing of, like, radio has died as the internet has become more and more ubiquitous, and the internet is in our cars now. So it's like the internet has kind of taken, and podcasting, to your point, has taken the place of radio.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you don't have to try and find a station you like. You just find everything you like. You just make a playlist of gamer tag radio and whatever. Maybe there's there's a football podcast that you like listening to, and a an 80s action figures podcast. There's just, it's great. I mean, that's the beauty part of it. There's people out there that following their passions in so many different things that you can find whatever it is that you're interested in, and immerse yourself in the joy and enthusiasm of it.
Yeah, definitely. And now let's go now to the Xbox games showcase. Now,
Let's
I
do
know
it.
everybody's talking about it, but before we talk about that showcase, which is going to happen sometime next week, Thursday of next week, was there any other press conference that, in your opinion, stood out to you from Xbox throughout the years?
Uh, well, the we'll start with the bad and then go with the
Yeah.
good, because we're just kind of working back. I mean, 2013 was bad. The actual What's funny is I actually don't remember much from the conference itself, but I remember I don't know where you were in the building then, but I was like sort of the front-ish, but over on the right side, I guess what would be stage left. But so anyway, where I'm sitting, I could see, of course, the stage, but then I could see the big teleprompter screen too. And it's getting towards the end, and I remember I look over, and before Phil says it, I see it on the screen. Xbox One available this, I don't know if it was November or holiday at that point in time, but available this holiday for $499. And I remember I saw it before he said it, and I was like, it was like a slow motion train wreck. I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
oh no. And he says it,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, Danny, I don't know if you remember, the air came out of that room.
It was crickets. Crickets. I remember.
It was awful.
Yes.
Like, it was just like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. This is terrible. This is a disaster.
Yeah.
And then of course Sony just twisted the knife that Microsoft had shoved into their own belly with the whole like, here's how to share used games thing. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I want to mention something about that. So I think that was the part that was the worst. But content-wise, because I had this conversation with Paris, because he actually went back and watched all the press conferences from 2013 till now.
Oh,
So
wow.
he said, Danny, if you actually think about it, that content-wise, it wasn't bad. It was just the price that killed the
Right.
whole press conference.
That was it.
But it was
Absolutely.
The Witcher 3, they showed it there. Titanfall was there. There was a couple other games too that I'm like, oh my God, it wasn't that bad. But like
Right.
you said, it was the price that killed everything, man.
Yeah.
You know?
But to go back to good ones, certainly the Santa Monica year,
Oh,
when E3
07.
moved out from the convention center in downtown LA, when E3 got canceled the first time.
Mhm.
But they were at a high school in Santa Monica, and that was the year. That was the Rock Band year, and you had Peter Moore on stage playing Rock Band live. Like, they should have. I can't believe they didn't just pre-record that, but he was playing live, and I remember they screwed up, like he screwed up a note at one point.
He paused the game, actually.
That's what it was. Thank you. Yeah, but that was super fun. That was a fun year.
Mhm.
There have been some really good years.
Which one was
I
this
mean-
one? The one that it was the Beatles, and they had also showed Alan Wake. That was a pretty good one too.
That would have been, I believe, 2009. Yeah, because that's when Beatles Rock Band was in 2009, 09.
Yes.
That was the year I wasn't there, because if you remember, that was the big recession, and our parent company Future we were furloughed that year, and then for E3 they were like, things are really tough. We're only going to send one person per staff to E3, and our editor-in-chief, Francesca Reyes, went. I didn't get to go that year. So that was one I watched from home. But yeah, that was a cool year too. It's like, oh, I missed seeing a Beatle.
That was classic. That was a classic
Yeah.
historic moment, man, gaming.
Yeah, and I really think, I'll tell you, the it would have been, how many years would this have been? I can't remember the specific year, but a few years ago with backwards compatibility, that was probably the biggest bring down the house moment that Xbox has had in the last 7 years.
Mhm.
That was a bit. It was just like this awesome thing that they were doing. So that one stands out as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that one too. That was really good. But now, Ryan, like I'm excited for next week, but at the same time, I'm kind of nervous because
Yeah.
the one thing I hate, I guess excited about something, and then when you see the results, you're like, it's okay or it's bad. You know what I'm saying? So
It,
how nervous are you for Microsoft? Because as a fan of Xbox, like because it's next week is a very important, I think is the most important press conference that they ever done in the history of the company.
and I know Paris feels the same way, and I wrote an editorial on IGN. I feel exactly the same way you guys do.
Hmm.
I'm not nervous for it. I'll be honest. Like, I try to be fair and objective as I take my job seriously, even though I cover video games. But I try to take it seriously within that. But of course, I am still also a fan. And I'll tell you, Danny, what I would say is I want Microsoft to have a win because I feel like they haven't had a real win in a long, like in this, basically this entire generation. I know I just said the backwards compatibility thing. That was awesome.
Hmm.
But like where people walk away going, man, yes, Xbox won E3 because every year Sony won E3, and most of the time that's been a pretty fair assessment to have because they've, whether they're showing The Last of Us Part 2 or they're showing Spider-Man or God of War, like,
Hmm.
yes, Sony has they've their presentations have mostly been really good. I mean, not every year, but I just want Microsoft. I would love for Microsoft
Hmm.
to just get a win where everybody collectively goes, "Yes, they killed that. Great job. Halo looks amazing.
Hmm.
This looks amazing. That looks amazing." So I'm rooting for them to have a great show. I just want to see them be able to take a victory lap for
Yeah,
once.
I totally agree. And you know what? I have to say this. Like, I just love how Phil has been really open and doing multiple interviews throughout the year. Because if you go back, Phil is like once in a blue moon he will do an interview with someone. Like
Right.
they're very careful on where they will have him on, right? So I know for us, I was trying to get Phil for years because we had him back in 2014,
Yeah.
and I was talking to Paris. I'm like, man, Paris, our 1,000 episodes coming up, man. I want to get Phil, but I really doubt he's gonna be on. And he was like, you know what? Contact them one more time, at least one more time. You never know. And I did it, and there was crickets all the way to like January. That's when we found out, hey, we're gonna have the interview with Phil, 1,000 episode. But ever since then, ever since he was on our show, he went to you guys. I think you guys interviewed him twice, two different shows, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, we recorded them at the same
Yeah.
time.
Oh
But yeah, it was,
well. He had
yeah,
a different shirt, so I was like, all right. But I'm saying like every month he was on either a website
yeah.
or a show. So I love that he's super open, talking about what they've been working on for a while now, and it was like a build up for July
Yes.
23rd. So it all started December of last year with the Game Awards where they showed
Mhm.
the console, Hellblade 2. So I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm just curious to see what is it they're gonna show, because like, look, I'm a fan of Halo. Of course, that's gonna be announced. We already know about that. But also, I feel like they have a lot of old IPs that they could bring back. That I feel like they need a second chance, man, to bring it back. Like
What do you want to see happen, Danny? What games do you want to see here?
Perfect Dark. I would love to see that. I'm a huge fan of Via Pinata, man. I play that more than Gears of War.
Yes.
I love Via Pinata.
Yeah.
And I think now, with everything that's going on, like games like Animal Crossing, that's like the perfect game, man, to have, right? Cameo, I think, was, in my opinion, it was a great game, man, for at that time for the 360. Not a lot of people liked it, but I think it was pretty cool. It was decent.
I liked it. I think that's one of those games where if you went back now, it might not hold up super great. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was one of those like launch goggle kind of games where
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I've got this brand new platform.
Hmm.
It plays in HD and the graphics are way better. And it was a good game. I agree. It was that was one of my that would probably be in my top 5 of the launch window games from the 360.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it was way better than Perfect Dark Zero. So, but even Paris always bring this up, bring back Banjo Kazooie, and I think
Yes.
that's possible because that character was in Smash, and I think that's a perfect opportunity to release a new game, right? But there's other ones too, man. I could go on. Crimson Skies. There's a bunch of other ones
Yeah.
that from
Well,
back
I'll
then.
tell you something I floated on Podcast Unlocked last week that people were I got a lot of tweets about from people that were like, yes,
Which one?
um, it would be Banjo 3E. Bring Banjo back. Give it to Double Fine.
Yes.
Let Tim Schafer make a Banjo game.
Yes.
How great would that
I'll
be?
be
That would be
I'll be good with that. I'll be really good
and
with that.
do it on Unreal Engine 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, make it the most incredible, beautiful, colorful game. Like, yeah, with his writing and the Double Fine team's talents, I would be like, because Rare's busy, and also, quite frankly, with no disrespect to Rare,
Mm-hmm.
the people that made Banjo, they're all gone. They're a lot of them stuck around together and they made Ukulele together.
Mm-hmm.
But like, Rare's busy with Sea of Thieves and Everwild. Give Banjo to Tim Schafer and his crew. That's what I
Hell
say.
yeah. And I'll tell you one more game that I feel is a very important game that I know it's a third party game, right? But it was an exclusive for Xbox, and that's Jet Set Radio Future,
Nice.
right?
Yes.
So, Sega has been giving the IPs to other studios to work on, like, for example, the Streets of Rage 4. That was from a totally different studio. Amazing game. Bayonetta. Now that's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. Jet Set Radio could be that exclusive for Xbox. Originally, if you think about it, the second game was the original Xbox. That was an exclusive for that console.
Right.
Why not bring that back? Announce that the Jet Set Radio Future is available right now on Xbox Game Pass, and just announce that they're working on the new game, next generation. And like you said, give it to a new studio that they're hungry.
Yeah.
And just let them do it. Because I think last week it was the 20th anniversary of that game, of the original Jet Set Radio. I know, I feel really old. But when they interviewed, I think it was USGamer.net, they interviewed the developers, the original developers of the game, and they want the game to come back. But when they made that game, they were hungry. They were hungry at that time. They want the next generation that's also hungry to work on the next Jet Set Radio. What you think about that?
I'm with you. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, if you find the right talent, I couldn't agree more. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like Sunset Overdrive kind of was that spiritual successor, and
Love that game.
sadly it bombed. But although it tanked, I think it was more. And I think I was talking to Phil about this on Unlocked. Yeah, I asked him about it publicly, and it seemed like it was. At least I interpret it more as that was an Xbox problem more than a Sunset Overdrive problem. At that, remember that was fall 2014, which when Xbox was still pretty down in the dumps at that point. But no, I'm with you. Like there really isn't anything like Jet Set now. Like I said, Sunset Overdrive was probably the last thing that even sort of was a close spiritual successor. So yeah, I'm totally on board with you on that.
But see, I loved Sunset Overdrive so much that was the game. That's the reason why there's a Spider-Man game.
That's true.
So they learned a lot from designing that game, and they're like, hey, we can make a better one now with Spider-Man. So
yep, the traversal in it, was really paved the way for Spider. You can definitely see the DNA of Spider-Man in Sunset Overdrive.
Definitely. So what is it that, in your opinion, because I asked this already a couple people, what could be the mic drop moment for Xbox next week?
So I did once 343 confirmed that Halo campaign would be showed. I tweeted about it, and then I got such a response that I just put up a silly little Twitter poll. I said, okay, well, do you think Halo will open the show or close the show? And most people voted open, and I agree. I think you've got to open with Halo, because people have been waiting to see that. They expect to see that. They know it's going to be there. Show it first. Set the tone with what will hopefully be a fantastic campaign. And a lot of people in the replies to that were Fable's the mic drop at the end. Announce the new Fable from Playground, and even if that, I guess, maybe wouldn't surprise people because Fable's sort of this poorly kept secret now. I think that would be pretty great, of just like Fable's back, but and show how Playground is putting their spin on it. I mean, we know like it's it's pretty obvious that it's going to use a version of Forza Horizon's tech because I mean, think about the awesome 4-season weather that's in Horizon 4 and apply that to a like medieval fantasy uh Fable game.
That would be amazing.
And what I mean that's a really cool technical foundation
Yeah.
for what that studio could do with that
Yeah.
game. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think Fable would be a tremendous way to go because I know Fable 3 was not as well received. There was Fable the Journey for Connect, which I reviewed for IGN. Most people have completely forgotten about that or never or tried never to remember it in the first place.
Yeah.
That was actually a fun game when it worked, but it literally, because of Connect, literally just didn't work half the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Fable always was a great idea. That Fable 2 was the closest it came to fulfilling that idea's potential, and I think it mostly did. But I think Fable's the one that, that could be their Zelda, their big fantasy action adventure game. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see it come back.
Yeah, and you know what, Ryan? Like, I'm excited for all the old IPs to make a return, but I also feel that Xbox should also announce new IPs, stuff that we have never seen before in gaming and also from the company, because I feel like there's way too many FPS, way too many. You don't want Xbox to just be known FPS forever, So like you said, Fable's a great game. I think that would be perfect. But show us new stuff. Like, I feel like I said before, Viva Pinata was like a unique game, but the crowd that supports Xbox, they love the shooters, So that's the thing that I love about Nintendo. They take risk all the time, And now PlayStation's been doing the same exact thing, especially with new IPs. And I think that Xbox definitely needs that too.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, the good news is, so Obsidian is confirmed to be at the showcase. They had publicly said, I think they said 343, Obsidian, and Double Fine were the three. So
Mhm.
maybe the Obsidian showing is just going to be grounded, but my hope is that it's going to be the new, presumably RPG from their other team, which was the Pillars of Eternity team, because
Mhm.
there's the Outer Worlds team, and they obviously shipped their game last fall, so they're going to be presumably doing a sequel because that was a successful game. And then you have the very small group of people. It was like 14 people, they said, that are working on Grounded. But then you've got the team that did Pillars of Eternity, the sequel. That was like 2.5 years ago that game shipped. So that crew should be well into something. Maybe it's going to be another Pillars of Eternity. Microsoft owns it all now. Or to your point, I'm kind of hoping it's a totally new RPG from, new idea from the ground up. We know In Exile is going to be doing an Unreal Engine 5 RPG as their next project after they finish off Wasteland 3 coming up next month.
Mhm.
And I mean, hopefully that's going to be a new IP as well. I mean, maybe they take Wasteland into, a totally different territory with Unreal Engine 5, but hopefully that'll be new. And you're right though. It's such a delicate balance between the cool IPs that Xbox does have in their portfolio, like you're talking about, but also bringing some new ideas to the table too. I mean, it's totally fair for Xbox fans to want to look at PlayStation and Sony and go, well, man, you had Guerrilla doing Killzone games. That was their franchise, but Sony allowed them to set that aside and do a new idea, and look what they got out of it. They got Horizon Zero Dawn, which was a tremendous success by any measure, and they had Uncharted at Naughty Dog, their biggest best studio, and they were allowed to branch off from Uncharted and do The Last of Us, which became even more successful and beloved than Uncharted was. So there's that evidence right there that's like, well, boy, it would be cool to see the coalition and cool to see 343 step outside and be allowed to flex their creativity on something new.
Yeah, and take risk, man. Like during the 360 days, I'll mention one game that I felt that it could make a return now too is Lost Odyssey from a Japanese studio, right?
Nice.
So
Yes.
amazing game. That was really good, right? And especially when we had Phil on our show, I think it was actually Paris that asked him about what about those a studio having a studio in Japan that's for Xbox. Is that going to happen? Are they planning to announce any games made from over there in Japan? And the reason is that I feel like that could happen too. First, based on the conversation we had with Phil, but also earlier this year, Xbox Game Pass officially launched in Japan, and that could be a big thing for Microsoft if they do it right. But they need that Japanese studio, I think, to stand out,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, and I mean, the history is there. You mentioned Jet Set Radio. There's in the early original Xbox days when the PlayStation 2 was this juggernaut, they got Team Ninja on board to do Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive,
Yeah.
which were these were Japanese developers, Japanese studio building exclusive games for an American console. There is a history there. Otogi is another from Software before From became the Dark Souls people.
What was
They
a
made a great.
what was a Phantom Dust?
I mean,
That
that
was
who,
was
that was Japanese
but that was
too.
they published that game. They published that game though.
Well, it was exclusive, I
Yeah,
believe.
and I mentioned another one too. Well, originally it was going to come up, but it got canceled. It was True Fantasy Online.
Don't. I remember looking at the trailers and the screenshots for that game. I loved the art style. It was just this gorgeous game, and it was going to be not level based, but it was going to be like you'd level up based on the stuff you're doing, which like Oblivion went on to do that later.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, boy, I was excited for that. That was level 5 too, like a renowned Japanese RPG studio. Yeah, I was very sad when that one got
Yeah,
killed.
Blue Dragon is it's another one that was pretty cool. I think So and
Definitely.
even had some Japanese animation, right? Like they had an anime for that, and also anime for cartoons for Viva Pinata. So Microsoft has done it all. I just feel like just the timing, man. It was just not the right time for that for them. So
Oh, you're so like I mean to your Viva Pinata, you're right. Like that game would kill now. Like it was arguably ahead of its time. It just
yeah.
came out before those kinds of games were a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. It's cool. So, is there anything else? Like, do you feel that they should show more about Xbox Game Pass and Project S Cloud during next week, or you think they should just focus on the games? In your opinion?
No, it's been hyped up as we're gonna finally show you the games. So that's what I don't. To me, I would say don't clown around with anything else. Just bombard me with your new games. Like make me wanna buy. I mean, I'm already buying a Series X, but like generally speaking, make people wanna get a Series X. Make them wanna upgrade. If they're a PlayStation owner, I'm not necessarily saying you're gonna convince people to switch outright from one conference, but maybe just put the Xbox in their minds, is make people go, well, wow, yeah, Microsoft. I was a PlayStation guy this generation, but man, maybe I should be trying to save up and get both this time around, because like make people wanna really pay attention to the Xbox platform, which again, not there have been a ton of great things this generation. I mean, the Xbox One X is a great mid-cycle upgrade console that's clearly better than the PS4 Pro. And you talked about, I mean, Game Pass we're going to look back on in 5 years and we're going to go, wait, there was a time when everyone wasn't doing that? What? Like, yeah, Game Pass is tremendous, but yeah, they've got to show the games. I mean, they've got to finally walk the walk. They've been talking the talk for the last 3 years of, we acquired 7 studios, we acquired 4 more studios. Now's the time to show what they've been up to.
You know what I want to ask you that I mentioned this online. I think you were the one that killed it for me. You were like, no, that's not going to happen. I feel, Ryan, that
Yeah.
I think Xbox might launch early before November. Maybe October, late September. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think Microsoft does not want to release Xbox Series X during the same time of PlayStation 5. But I get what you were saying because of the situation that we're in now with
Right.
COVID. Maybe those plans has changed. So it's possible that we might see this console earlier instead of having releasing in November.
Yeah, I mean, I completely get where you're coming from in that, especially if, because we've been speculating about this a ton on Podcast Unlocked, like based on what Phil told me in my interview with him a few months ago, uh, where he said that they're going to remain agile on pricing and that he has the backing of Amy Hood, the CFO, and Satya Nadella, the CEO, to stay agile on pricing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if if they undercut Sony on the PS5 and they're $50 or $100 cheaper, I mean, it definitely would make a lot of sense in a vacuum to come out first, which is obviously what they did with the 360 to an extreme degree. They were a year, they beat PlayStation by a year there, but they had the great games to go with it for that year too, which is part of why they got off to such a great start
Mm-hmm.
in the 360 generation.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense for if they can be cheaper than PS5, get out early and tempt some people. Say, hey, we're out a month earlier than they are. We've got some cool games, some next generation games here, and we're cheaper, and we got a really powerful machine. So there's a compelling argument to be made. For me, it's the supply issues. I mean, granted, I don't have insight into that, but just based on what we've been hearing and seeing from these companies about how COVID had slowed down everything
Mm-hmm.
on the manufacturing side. Maybe they've caught up now, and that's moot. But the other one to me is Halo. I mean, it's they've been working on it for 5 years, but launch titles are so hard for they compound the difficulty level for developers because you're trying to ship you're trying to ship a game, you're trying to ship a AAA game, and you're trying to ship a AAA game on a brand new platform, and in this case, while also supporting the current platform. So it seems like, plus the fact that we've been shown so little of Halo to now, it just kind of feels like they're probably going to need every day they can get. And I mean, maybe they've been building that into the schedule, and they're going to make late September or October, and you're going to end up being a profit. But it just seems like there are too many logistics against it. So
No,
I
I
mean,
agree.
I don't know anything,
But I
but
agree though what you're saying
that's
though. I totally agree. Couple months ago, actually last year, I was talking to Peter Moore. He was on our show to talk about the 20th anniversary of Sega Dreamcast. And what
oh awesome.
and one of the things that he mentioned to me that stood out to me at that moment, at that time, I mean, I didn't realize that. He mentioned that one of the mistakes that they did back then was they launched too many games for launch for the Dreamcast, and then there was like this time there was super dry. There was no games
Yeah.
from Sega, right? So if you go a couple years back when the Nintendo Switch launched, every month there was a new game exclusive first party from Nintendo,
Yes, sir.
right? And I know Xbox 360 had a pretty decent launch around day one, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many games do you think it will be perfect for Microsoft to launch for the Xbox Series X, Game Pass, and everything later this year?
Well, yeah, I brought this up to Phil in our interview a few months
Mm-hmm.
ago, and he, in his Phil way of sort of saying it without explicitly saying it,
Mm-hmm.
he pretty well. My interpretation was exactly that we any probably shouldn't expect anything besides Halo from first party. Maybe there'll be one other thing. I mean, I was convinced forever, just based on the calendar, that Forza Motorsport 8 was going to be a launch title, because they already skipped a year. You know, we didn't get a Forza last year
Mm-hmm.
as we typically have. But it was pointed out to me on Twitter that Microsoft's been putting a lot of attention on Dirt 5 and 4K 120 frames, and it's like, would they be doing that if Forza Motorsport 8 were getting ready to gear up and get announced and get launched? And like, maybe not. So maybe that Forza is really, they're really kind of tearing everything down and rebuilding it for next gen. So yeah, I think, but Phil also said your exact point that with Game Pass that he wants to have a steady flow of content. So yeah, I think we're probably looking from first party at Halo and then a more kind of continuous stream of regular releases rather than stacking a bunch of stuff up on launch day, which makes sense because now we already know, Danny, that we're getting Halo Infinite on day one, and then from third party, there's Watch Dogs will be out. That's in October 29th. So it may all if it launches early, like you're suggesting and hoping for, maybe Watch Dogs is a launch title. Or if it ends up launching in November, it's already out, so you could play that on Series X. And then Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that's November 17th. And, of course, Cyberpunk 2077, that's, like, that game, yeah, why would you send a first-party game that you've spent years on out to die
with that game
when Cyberpunk's out there? Because you have to know. Like, it's like, even if it's a totally different genre, Cyberpunk is going to be a juggernaut this fall. I mean, you're looking at the three biggies. So we don't even, Call of Duty hasn't even been announced, but that's a huge every year. So you've got Call of Duty, you've got Halo Infinite, you've got Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you've got Cyberpunk, you've got Spider-Man Miles Morales. And setting aside, I don't care if you're happy or mad, how you feel about it being, a standalone expansion kind of thing. It's still a huge release. Spider-Man was a massive game. So you've got all those. If you're Microsoft, why would you put anything else out into that? Like for Series X, save it for January, save it for February, right?
Yeah, and I think the more you mention that, the more I'm convinced that the Series X might come out a little bit early because why would Microsoft release Halo Infinite in the middle of all that in November? It's brutal. And like you said, they've been working on that game for a very long time, 5 years.
Yeah.
Imagine releasing it in the middle of November with all those games at around the same time.
Yeah, I mean, look at Halo 3. Remember Halo 3 came out in late September and it avoided Call of Duty in November.
Modern Warfare. Yep.
That's right. That was 2007. Yeah, that was the biggest Call of Duty ever. That it had a couple month head start on, so it could still get an audience and do well. So yeah, I mean, you certainly make a very compelling point and good argument there.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, release maybe 2 games, so it'll be Halo Infinite, maybe a digital independent game, maybe Cuphead or something like that, right? Release it around that time, and then every month there will be a first party or an exclusive third party time exclusive game on Xbox Game Pass every month throughout the whole year, and then early next year, then you could start releasing maybe Fable or like stuff like that, in spring. So I think they could do that, stretch it out, because they have so many studios now that they could start doing episodic episodes or full game episodes, like like the Outer Worlds and stuff like that. I think that will work out perfectly for Xbox.
Well, think about we could also have for day one. For day one of Series X, we could also get the Series X enhanced version of Flight Sim, which just got a PC release date for August.
Yes, agreed.
So that's a possibility because it is coming to Xbox. So the timing seems right. Like, okay, 3-4 months to get the console version ready to go for Series X. Gears Tactics, they could have, again, that game's been out for PC, but it would be new for console players who don't game on PC.
Agreed.
That could be there on day one. And the one we know for a fact, it has been announced that, yes, okay, older game now, but the Series X optimized version of Gears 5 will be there on day and date as well. So, that's another thing if you didn't play it last year, you could play it now, and even if you did, all right, well, here's some good reason to run it again
Mhm.
with Series X optimization. So there's going to be that might be their smart way of having first party support without sending a new game out to get killed.
Yes, yes, and something totally different too, because the flight simulator that to me could be the pilot wings for Xbox One for launch, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and what better time to put out a game, a hardcore, gorgeous simulation of traveling than in the middle of a pandemic where nobody's really
Yeah.
traveling. Like
Yeah.
it's quite the, even though Flight Simulator is not really a game per se, it's a simulation,
Mhm.
but it's what better time to put that out? It's total escapist
Mhm.
entertainment.
Yeah, I asked this question to Major Nelson. I think it was last year at E3. We had a very long conversation about his life and him as a podcast and everything. So for you, which I'm going to end it with this question: you have kids, or imagine grandkids in the future, 100 years from now. Like, what is it that you want people to remember you? If they go back and they find one of your Tesla's podcasts 100 years from now, something like that, it's like, because I feel like now it's easier for the next generation or even this generation to find us online, because when I find pictures of my parents, it's like one of those rare moments, right? But your kids, they could go to Google and just search
That's
your
right.
name and they'll find pictures, articles, all type of stuff. So what is it you want people to remember you?
That's a great question. That is a fantastic question. I've never really thought about, but
Hmm.
yeah, I'll tell you, I would hope that I'm remembered as just someone that what that pursued their passions with uh, integrity and diligence. Like it's,
Hmm.
I do this. I take my job really seriously, my career really seriously. I do the Tesla podcast every week, like literally every week. I don't miss a week because
Hmm.
I think it's important to do the work and to be there for your audience if you're serious about it. So yeah, I hope somebody would look back and go, yeah, wow, that guy, like, he was really adamant about pursuing the things he loved and uh, working on the things he loved in a way that was that my ancestors, my children, grandchildren could be proud of. Like, to your point kind of earlier about clickbait and all that stuff, like that I had the integrity of
Hmm.
doing, an honest day's work in these enthusiastic pursuits that I'm so lucky to call my job.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm excited for next week, man. I'm excited to see your
You and me
reaction,
both.
your reaction of everything, because I know you're also a huge fan of Xbox. But now, Ryan, just want to say, man, thank you for being on the show, man. And hopefully we can have you back. And you know what I would love to do in the future? Not now, but in the
Hmm.
future, maybe close to the launch of Xbox Series X. I would love to do like a podcast unlock cross GTR, some type of, you know, together podcast. That
Let's do
that
it.
I think that would be
Absolutely.
cool. Something different.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm all for that. I mean, there aren't a lot of, particularly, especially long running podcasts
Mhm.
that are dedicated to Xbox. Like, I don't say that in a bragging way, but like like there are plenty of YouTube shows and things out there, but like you've been going longer than anyone. I've been at it at IGN for a while, and prior to that at OXM
Mhm.
for a while. So the reason I say that is, like, to my point earlier about, you and I have endured the dark ages of Xbox. This generation where Microsoft's been down and out.
Mhm.
So we're not assuming the Series X and the future is going to be really bright for Xbox, and we're going to head back into a glory period for Xbox again.
Mhm.
You and I, it'll mean a lot more to us because
Yeah.
we were there in the bad times. We didn't just hop on the bandwagon
Yeah.
when the Series X came in and does really well. Like, well, we remember the good times with original Xbox and the 360,
Mhm.
and then the dark years with the
Yeah.
Xbox One. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have that context that we can share with, communicate to and share with our audience.
Yeah, definitely, man. All right, but thanks a lot, Ryan.
Absolutely,
Oh,
Danny. Always a pleasure.
mention your Twitter account, man. People want to follow you.
Oh, sure thing. It's I'm at DMC_Ryan, and it's not Devil May Cry. It's because I used to own a DeLorean. If you're curious,
Yeah.
that's another story.
Yeah.
That's another show. But yeah, follow me on there anytime. And if you're curious about electric cars and Teslas specifically, I do my weekly Tesla podcast. It's called Ride the Lightning. So just search Ride the Lightning Tesla, or you can find the link in my Twitter bio.
Yeah, and make sure to listen to episode 100. That's a very important episode for you, right? For your podcast.
200.
Oh, 200.
Of Ride the Lightning. Yeah,
200.
I had a 1 hour sit down with Elon Musk. So that was you talk about trying to get Phil and taking months and months to set that up.
Yeah.
That was how it was with Elon. It took a long, long time, but very proud to have gotten that opportunity.
All right, cool. Congratulations, man. All right, Ryan. Thanks a lot.